Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. We're really happy you could join us today for this very special webinar where Bill Hinsley is going to share information about why the Architects Experience and METALCON are such a great fit, and all the amazing things that we have to offer you, including his education, which he will explain in more detail in a minute. But before I turn the mic over to Bill, I just want to share with you that we feel that we have a unique and unprecedented opportunity to share with you so many things that we have to offer at METALCON. Can you go to the next slide? Sorry about that. We have a full program. We obviously believe that metal is a very important material that should be on every architect's palette. So what we've done is we've created this experience, and that's why we're calling it the Architects Experience, an experience dedicated to architects to bring you up to date on some of the new innovations that metal is being used for, to help you with some of the connections that you need with some of the best vendors, roll formers, and producers of metal construction materials in the world. So we also seasoned this whole opportunity with this incredible opportunity to go to the Dali Museum, which is nearby. It's just about 25 minutes away. We're providing transportation, reception. We've got all kinds of great things in store. Where the architect of the Dali Museum his name is Jan Weymouth, is going to be speaking personally to you. Jan has done work with IMP. He worked on the Louvre in Paris and a number of other incredible projects with IMP, and then the Dali Museum. The Dali Museum is listed as one of the top places that you should visit before you die. I hate to put it that way, but it really is true. And it's an unbelievable building. If you have an opportunity to Google it and take a look at it, we might have some photos we can share with you before the presentation ends. But it's just incredible. Oh, there we go. You can see right out on the outside of the building all of the metal and glass fabrications there. And Novum, one of our fantastic sponsors, is going to be there to talk about their influence on the building and to sponsor a reception. So we really have an incredible opportunity. We hope to see you in Tampa. And now I'm going to turn it over to Bill. I'm going to give him his formal introduction, but Bill is bringing some very special education that has never been offered at METALCON before. Usually Bill's sessions take place all around the country. They're usually 2-day workshops. They can be quite expensive, but PSMJ has given us the best of the best and the cream of the crop, allowing us to bring Bill to METALCON to talk to you about all of these incredible ways you can enhance your practice in business management. So you'll get, you're going to get the full deal. You're going to get the tour, you're going to get the metal construction education, and you're going to get the PSMJ practice mini camp education. So it's really a win-win situation. So let me tell you a little bit about Bill. He brings more than 17 years of experience from PSMJ and is currently Associate Vice President with Arcadis. His experience in project management includes planning, execution, quality management, as well as business development and sales experience from pre-positioning to proposals and negotiations with existing and new clients for projects ranging from $1 million to $11 billion. He has been involved with the AEC industry for more than 14 years. And previously, he was a senior management analyst for 2 governors' commissions focused on Everglades restoration. In addition to being a trainer with PSMJ Resources, he has served as a senior leader in 2 international AE companies, providing consultancy, design, engineering, and management services in the fields of infrastructure, water, environment, and buildings. So I'm thrilled to have you here, and I'm thrilled to turn this over to Bill as he shares what he'll be talking about at METALCON this year. Thank you for joining.
Absolutely.
Over to you, Bill.
All right. That sounds excellent. Hey, look at Kaylin popping in there. I will share my screen. There you go. Gotta say hi. We gotta have a little bit of fun while we're learning. So let's see. I am gonna share, let's see, my screen. And I think we've got that. Does that look good to everybody? I think so. Like that. Let me see if I can kind of look around. All right, we've got that. All right, if I'm looking in there, I think Kaylin, give me a kind of thumbs up or a yes, just so I've got my screen shared properly. And if that's the case, I'll jump in and start chatting with everybody. Oh, look at that thumbs up. Good stuff. Well, thank you for that generous introduction. I really am passionate about this industry. Can't go anywhere in the world in the natural environment or really what we're talking about, the built environment, and not be affected by what architects, engineers, and the construction world brings into life. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the architect's experience because we've got the opportunity to sit down and spend 4 hours together over the course of the METALCON program. We're going to talk a little bit from our project management bootcamp. We're going to talk from the principles bootcamp, from the leadership bootcamp, and from our winning proposals bootcamp. So as you've already heard, each one of these programs is a 2-day program, really 13 to 13 and a half hours of contact time, where we go deep into many topics. What I've done is begun to distill down some of the pain points that I hear while delivering these programs, so that we can have really a focused hours conversation and discussion. What I'm hearing a lot in the industry from architects are, hey, we're having some troubles and it's a pain point to help develop strong project managers. How do I align and how do I balance that project manager versus project architect alignment, whether I'm in a small firm or a big firm? Finding the right price. I hear that a lot of folks are busy right now. I am also sensitive to conversations about price sensitivity with some of our clients. But also I want to talk a little bit about how do we have an opportunity when folks are both busy and there is pricing sensitivity. So we're going to talk about finding the right price. We're going to talk about leading across generations. We're having boomers retire. Millennials are getting older. And we're now even welcoming Generation Z into the workforce. So we're going to talk about working across the generations. And then, hey, yeah, don't forget about us, the Xers in all of this. And then we're going to talk about implementing a real seller-doer approach. So hopefully from these 4 questions that you can see here, it begins to kind of lead you to why did, first of all, we even pick these 4 programs? Well, first one is talking about project management. So we're going to be there. Number 2, principles, talking about that pricing sensitivity. Number 3, talking about leadership across the different generations. And number 4, our seller doer or our winning proposals bootcamp. So you can see these are 4 of the programs that PSMJ typically offers in that 2-day setting. So what I want to do is with all of us for the course of this hour, just run you through a little bit about what it is that we're going to talk about in the project manager, or rather the architect's experience. I'm already talking about project management bootcamp. So what I intend to do is give you some value here. I want to make this hour worth your time, but also, be a little bit of a primer about what we're going to talk about in the time together. So I can see Kaylin put in the chat box and in the question and answer box. If you're familiar with Zoom, as I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, I hope you are, when you look at the navigation button that has mute and you're sharing a video, participants, things like that, there should be a box there that either says Q&A or says chat. So be sure to chat or put questions you've got in that chat box and check in, because you know what, honestly, you don't have to hold them to the end. I'd be happy if I get interrupted And let's begin talking through and working through things here as we go. So as an overview, the project management bootcamp, this is what I will be prepared if we need to when we're together for that day to talk about anything that you can see over the course of a typical 6 session that we deliver the project management bootcamp. So you can see this is the agenda for the typical PM bootcamp. I always start with what is a project manager? And honestly, that's where the slides, that's where the content's going to come from when we talk about trying to build strong PMs. That said, I'll be ready to talk about any of these other topics, from business development to planning the project, the basics of scope, schedule, budget, quality, risk, leading our team, managing change, managing clients, personal productivity for PMs, controlling budgets and schedules, getting out of trouble, wrapping up the seminar. So again, I'll be prepared to talk about anything from the PM program specifically. What I'm going to talk about as a PM is what is a project manager. You'll see that there's some of the other topics here that relate to those pain topics that I brought up. But for this, I really want to get to, hey, how do we develop PMs? So first things first, this is a phenomenal test. In the typical project management bootcamp and in the typical principles bootcamps that I lead, what I talk about, and take a screenshot of this if you need to, right? You can grab it right here. I would say this is the first and foundational discussion point. Sit down with a project manager and ask them, do you do this thing on the left for projects that you manage, or do you do this thing on your right? In other words, do you manage proposal efforts for either tasks or projects that you manage, or do you have little involvement in marketing and sales? The reality is they can pick one and only one of these. So they can't, and by the way, they can't put a third column in here. So this is a binary choice. So I ask them, go ahead and check these off. What I want you to do as well, if you're a principal or if you're an owner in your firm or if you're their supervisors, you take this test as well. And once you've taken this test, then you can compare those answers. Because to us at PSMJ, when you see these 2 actions that I put on here, it takes 10 or 11 checks in this left column to be what we call a strong project manager. In other words, if you're not doing 10 or 11 of these things, we would call you a project administrator. So in the program, in the 1-day minicamp, or not 1 day, 1 hour minicamp, we're going to talk about the differences between a strong PM and a project administrator. Doesn't necessarily mean one is right and one is wrong, but we're going to talk about the pros and cons of both of these. We're going to talk about the culture that develops by really fostering one of these or the other. Not only that, after we talk a little bit about what our PMs are doing, we're going to talk about, by the way, that's a homework assignment. See, I'll give you a homework assignment here. You'll have a homework assignment in some of the tools in the 1-day or 1 hour minicamp, but you can take this, as a homework assignment with you right now. Meet with your PMs. Start to develop a plan about what it will take for you to build that strong PM culture. What I want to do once we know what the PMs are doing is then talking about alignment between our project managers and between our principals in charge, right? What is that alignment, and how do we foster the conversation between PM and principal in charge? Or, and we'll talk about this when we get together in Tampa, what about adding another column for project architect, right? Or technical lead. So how do we align the roles and responsibilities of that PM, of the principal in charge, or of a project architect? And what happens if we have 3 columns here, but only 2 people? How do we address that? We'll talk all through that. So you can see here's kind of a blank form with some suggestions. We'll talk about that, but we'll also talk about, what would it look like to have this as a blank page? And how will we do a little bit of homework assignment to make sure that we're getting things aligned? And the last thing I'll leave you with here, just kind of as a little bit of a point of reference, is firms are varied. I've taught, I think now it's approaching about 7,000 project managers. I've worked with hundreds of firms. And what I've learned is many of the firms that I've worked with are level 3, level 4, level 5. They're not a homogeneous group of every job with every principal and every PM and every client works the same. We've got to have these conversations to be understanding of the roles and responsibilities of all our people that are ultimately responsible for project execution. So that's a little bit of an overview about what we're going to talk about in the project management mini camp. Next, I think that afternoon, we're going to have a discussion about a principles mini camp. So with the foundation of project management covered, we'll go into the principles mini camp. And I'm looking, Kaylin, I don't see any questions yet, but feel free to interrupt if you get any. And to the folks that I see we got several attendees. Don't be shy, because I'm happy to be interrupted. So I don't see it.
me. I'll always interrupt you.
That sounds good. I don't see any right there. So is it okay to kind of roll into the principles?
Absolutely.
Perfect. We'll do it. So next is the principles mini camp. You can see a little bit of a snapshot here. Same thing. I wanted to give you an overview of what it is that we do in a typical PSMJ project management boot camp. And then this is the principles boot camp. So you can see each one of these sessions. From this session, I've really pulled from our strategic and business development, also our financial management. When we're talking from the principles boot camp, I want to talk about pricing. And that's the very thing that we're going to do. We're going to jump into a conversation early on about commoditization and commoditization specifically in our industry. Here's some great information if you want to take a look at it. Recent poll we did, and we asked folks, how much are you feeling that pressure of commoditization? About 2/3 of folks were saying it's a major issue and it's causing us some stress. You can see that a little less than 1/3 said, you know what's an issue, but we're overcoming it. And then sometimes it's like, listen to this little voice here. Almost 3% of folks said it's overblown hype. Okay, so a lot of folks would say, let's go and see what everybody's doing. As a contrary point, I'm not going to talk about what everybody's doing. I don't even know if I'm going to talk about this third. I'm going to talk about what do these folks say that it's a bunch of overblown hype, right? How do we address this? What are we doing with it? So we'll have some industry information from PSMJ. And we're going to go in here. This is a phenomenal equation. If you've never seen this before, we're going to talk about this equation for a little while and how do we work it for our firm, right? The notion here is value, and it's important for me to say this, value as defined by our clients. So not how we perceive value, but how our clients perceive value. It's really this equation of benefits minus costs. Right. And I'll say that even a little bit more granularly. You can see here, it's benefits. A lot of times that's what a niche is giving your clients some phenomenal benefits minus costs. That's where our commodity buyers really focus. What are the costs? And we'll talk about what are visible costs. It's easy to say that, money, right, or fees, but also hidden costs. You know, those hidden costs of, you know, are we maybe sometimes guilty of a lack of responsiveness? Are we responsive when indeed our competition is not? You know, those other hidden costs like hassles, inconsistent quality, and change orders. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we understand our clients, and do we have a full and honest assessment of how our clients really define value. Working from that, we can talk a little bit about how do we develop success strategies. Right? Because if we really are focused on niche markets, there's certain things we should be doing, right? How to stay ahead of our competition, right? How to price appropriately and maintain those really high margins. And you can see the rest of these items here. I'm not going to read them all. On the other hand, if we're in commodity markets, now we need to really be that low cost producer, right? Low cost provider. So we'll talk a little bit about how to price best there, but then actually how to make some profit along the way. So it's a little bit of a different operational understanding once we align ourselves with that market. Okay. And to finally wrap up what we're going to talk about there, we'll talk a little bit about building the optimum price, right? Building the optimum price. Some folks, you know, say, hey, I can't afford to cut my costs at all, right? If we cut our costs, we're not going to make any money. Well, let's take a look at that. Maybe cutting the costs is the right thing. On the other hand, some folks go, you know what? I just can't raise my prices. Well, we'll talk a little bit about how sensitive is our market. Maybe we raise our price. Maybe we do lose a job or two. Maybe we lose a little revenue, but you know what? We're making up for it because we're attaining higher profits in some of the work that we are doing. So we'll talk a little bit about price sensitivity, right? And how much or how little can we actually raise those prices. That's going to be a great exercise. And you'll walk out of there with an Excel sheet so that we could do some modeling in real time of how we're working with our clients. So there you go. That's the second session that we'll have on day one, the principles mini camp. Next, we'll talk a little bit about leadership mini camp. Leadership mini camp is coming to you from that perspective of our leadership program. This is a great program. I really enjoy teaching our leadership boot camp. We used to call it emerging leaders. Now we call it our leadership boot camp. You can see the 6 different sessions. So again, just to reemphasize, I've got us programmed in each one of these hour mini camps to probably have between 35 to 40 minutes of slides. But my objective is have as much discussion as possible. Right. So if we need to, if you will, deviate from what I have prepared, not a problem. I got the whole slide deck and I'm used to teaching it. That said, based upon the pain points that I'm hearing, I want to talk about some intergenerational issues and solutions that we see. If you go back, only 15 years ago, you see that the boomers, right, that was the big, the big chunk of our business. Doesn't look like that anymore, right? Many of those boomers have done what? They've left the business, right? Or are in the final, stages of leaving the, well, sorry about that. Like, I think, yeah, you can kind of see that clicking down. I think my line is very light blue there. They're leaving the business, right? The millennials are by far now the majority, so working with them. By the way, I like to, as an Xer, I like to point this out. The Xers never were and never will be in the majority. So kind of stuck in the middle. I think whenever I say stuck in the middle, then I'm starting to hear the song Uka Chaka, Uka Uka. There you go. I won't do any more singing. But we're going to talk about those dynamics, right? Generations coming in, generations leaving the workforce. What does that do to us? What does that do and what should we be aware of? We'll talk about some of the values that different generations have, some of the different leadership styles, and how people like to be led. Communication, feedback methods. We'll talk a little bit about reward systems for each of the different generations. What really motivates? Are they maybe the sum of their stereotypes, or maybe some of those motivations a little bit different? Got a slide on that we'll talk about, and some different strategies that we'll approach each of these generations uniquely with. So yeah, when we talk a little bit about that, are some of the generations or generational rather stereotypes all they cut up to be? I'm not picking on the millennials, but let me talk about this from a little bit of a millennial perspective, right? Are millennials as collaborative as that we've really heard, right? Is it all about the collaboration? Well, you know what? Look at this. Competition gets me up in the morning. That looks pretty highly competitive. I compare myself to my peers. Again, about a 10-point spread, right? I don't trust my peers' input at work. What? 10-point spread again. So is it all about collaboration? Some of the numbers out of 90,000 people might say maybe not. Are they really so altruistic? Well, let's see. One of my top reasons for choosing a job is my future career opportunities. Yeah, millennials looking to the future, right? Put a high emphasis on corporate social responsibility. Ooh, interesting, a little bit lower than other generations. So, and then finally, we'll talk about, are millennials so rebellious? Well, employers should do what their managers tell them. Seems like there's a little bit of truth in the numbers. So we'll talk about this, right? We'll look at this. We're going to talk about, hey, not only that, I don't know if we've heard a little bit about the Great Resignation, right? Do millennials really change jobs more often? Maybe not so much. Right. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. By the way, I will pull from one of my colleague here at PSMJ, Tim Griffin, some of what he's got in his book, Lattes, Puppies, and Unlimited Vacation, right? Attracting, retaining, and empowering millennials in our design firms. So we'll talk through that. And we'll talk through the issues at hand right now, as I brought up earlier, in this period that we find ourselves, some that are terming it the Great Resignation. And then finally, or the fourth program that we're going to talk through is our seller doer mini camp, kind of winning proposals. So from that program, you can see there's again, a wide variety of topics that we can choose from. And I'll be happy to kind of pull through and talk through from any of them. But for now, let me just kind of talk about some of the high points of what it is that I look to really draw from. to me, in this business development scenario, it's important that we really look at the roles and responsibilities. What are our project managers doing? What are maybe project architects doing? What are the principals in charge doing? I'll talk a little bit about what we call the business development triangle. Marketing on the front end, really looking at developing that brand, developing the relationship, creating the relationship where clients call you. Sales is actually closing the deal, right? The effort of actually pushing a proposal or a shortlist presentation or a change order out the door. And then there's client management, which is what we do as project professionals throughout the duration or throughout the course of project execution, right? So it's not good enough to just make the relationship. It's not good enough just to win the job, right? We've got to deliver on our promises. And while we're delivering on those promises, we get ready to go around that wheel again, or around that triangle again, to look for prospects to indeed bring the next amount of work in. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the dynamics that we face in our businesses and what we can do about them. So that triangle is a powerful tool if you've not seen it before, right? And we'll talk about kind of closing the loop that we opened for the first session, talking about project management. You know, why are project managers, and we can get into that conversation, project manager, project architect, right? Why are project managers, I'll stay with, why are they at the forefront of our business development efforts, right? A lot of firms have more project managers or project architects working than they do principals. So let's multiply the efforts of those first frontline individuals. Not only that, creating what we call pull through marketing, right? That's when your clients pull you into the conversation. You know, that's all about professional development. That's us sharing information with our clients. And that makes the phone ring, right? Then we'll talk about the sales side, right? I said that earlier, like getting that RFP, pushing, noticing the different words I said there. On the marketing side, I say they pull us into it, creating pull through. Sales is pushing those proposals out the door, right? And then it's, you know, getting all the steps done of the sales process. It's not just the RFP or the RFQ, it's a shortlist presentation, right? It's the scoping, it's the budgeting, right? It's actually negotiating. So let's make sure that we close the deal. And then finally, it's supporting our project managers, our project delivery staff, because you know what? People work with people that they know, that they like, that they trust. No better time to get known, no better time, you know, to develop that rapport so our clients like us and trust us than we're executing the project, right? The PMs can make that phone ring and then we'll come back and we'll do it all over again. So I'm going to talk about this triangle, and I'm going to talk about two specific items. The first is the go, no-go process. And just think and reflect a little bit on this for your firm. It's pretty interesting. I like this. We took a recent poll, and what we learned is 60% of architectural or engineering firms, they've got a go, no-go process, right? So 60% of firms have a go, no-go process. But check this out. I like this data. How effective are those go, no-go processes? I'm just going to kind of click that so everybody can see that. All right. I don't really want to make this a statistics class here, but you can see this column, firms with formal go, no-go process. Okay, I see some numbers. Firms without formal go, no-go process. Doesn't look like much difference, does it? Doesn't look like much difference at all. Yeah, I'm no statistician, but it doesn't really seem like a formal go, no-go process is doing much, right? So we'll talk about why. We'll talk about why from the position of our head or an analytic position, and we'll talk about it from a position of the heart, right? Or a gut. Come on, let's just go for that project anyways. I don't know if there's a chance or not. So let's go for it. So we're going to talk about kind of understanding what our head and our heart tell us. But then also we're going to work through a free tool that PSMJ has. It's called a go, no-go application, so that everybody can leave that session having a tool that's ripe to improve their hit rate, because that's what it's all about. To me, it's not about going after proposals. It's not even about going after more proposals. To me, maybe it's about going after less proposals, but winning more work. So that's a big deal that we'll talk through. And then finally, we're going to talk through this change management. And I think what the METALCON group has done is pretty phenomenal, because allowing me to come in as a PSMJ instructor and spend just 4 hours working through these mini camps, is each one of these mini camps is going to build on the next. But that's it, it's only an hour, right? But at the end of these 4 hours, we're going to talk about maybe a topic that some folks call taboo. We're going to talk about scope creep, and we're going to talk about change management. Having had that conversation about strong project managers, having had that conversation about pricing, right? Having had that conversation about understanding the way different generations lead, both internally and with our clients, now we can put this all together in a conversation about change, right? Because the reality is we've got data at PSMJ that shows this. Project managers who have conversations with their clients about change early on in the project tend to have two outcomes. Number one, they tend to have more satisfied clients, right? Rewind the tape. They tend to have more satisfied clients. Their clients are happier with them, right? And number two, they tend to be more profitable project managers. So we'll talk about, some of the benefits of scope creep. It's great, right? Clients can feel like they're taken care of. We can generate more sales revenue, right? At little to no marketing costs. We don't have competition because all we have to do is use an existing contract, right? Do an ad services agreement, an ASR, or a change or a modification using the same terms, using the same rates. And look what we've done. We've taken care of a client pain point, and we built some more revenue for us. And we'll also talk a little bit about what if the client doesn't have any money. So there's some creative solutions that we've heard from and that we'll talk about as we get together. Okay. So just as kind of a recap here, right? What to expect at the METALCON. Expect 4 different and 4 independent mini camps. Again, we're going to talk about the project management boot camp. We'll talk from the principles boot camp. We'll talk from the leadership boot camp, and we'll talk from the winning proposals or the seller doer boot camp. Each one of these 4 one-hour discussions will stand alone, right? It's a great standalone. Yet, if you're there, right, for all 4 of them, they're really going to build upon one another. What I'm looking to do is, have a few folks that can really have some intimate, have some, kind of no BS conversations about what it is that we need to do to move our businesses forward, right? So with that, what are you going to get from it? You're going to get the content overview. I've just kind of talked quickly in about a half an hour about what it is that we're going to get. And suffice to say this, if you don't like those 4 topics, if you're like, Bill, my project managers are awesome, we've got great pricing, no generational problems, and you know what? Hey, change management, not a big deal. Great, there's a ton of other topics that we can talk about, right? That's why I kind of showed the full item on there. But those are the 4 topics that I want to talk about. I'm going to include tools, right? Excel files, scripts, things like that. So when you walk away, you've got real homework and have to do real work to get real results. And we're going to, as I said, I've got about 35 to 40 minutes out of each of these 1-hour programs set up to actually present, and then we can talk for the rest. Not only that, I'm going to be walking the floor of METALCON as well. So it's not like 4 hours and that's it, I'm out. No. So as you see me, we can walk around. By the way, I get to go to the Dolly Museum. You think you guys get to go to the Dolly Museum and I don't? We get to do that. So I'm going to be there. We can talk through it. That's all good stuff. So with that, Kaylin, I just want to open it up with this crowd for a little bit of discussion. By the way, my email address is there too. I figured it wouldn't hurt to throw that in, because if anybody's shy, I get it. You don't want to ask a question. You can send me an email. I'm happy to do that. But just as you see here, we're 35 minutes after the hour. I didn't want to go too long. I wanted to allow some folks to talk about and have some question and answers if we wanted to do that. Well, I'll take
Absolutely. Please, if anyone here has questions, we welcome them. If you have questions about specific content, Bill is here. If you have questions about anything else METALCON related, from your tour at the Dolly Museum to your show floor tour to any other particular education that might not have been touched on here, please don't hesitate to let me know. We're always here to help. So we'll open it up to questions for the next few minutes. Feel free to send anything through the chat, or feel free to send it through the Q&A. We're monitoring both right now. But if there are no questions, then we can call it a day. But that's up to you, Bill. Do you have any final comments you'd like to make to the attendees?
To me, I'm really excited about this. I've been to a few shows, a few of the METALCON shows, Kaylin. I think it's a fantastic time, right, to see, with our eyes, with our hands, what it is that we ultimately bring into the world of building. I think this year having the architect's experience is going to be special because we kind of have our own space. We have the opportunity to meet and talk. Other architects are going to get together. You've got me as a resource throughout the 2 days of the program, so we can kind of talk about what it is that you're dealing with. And at least what I've found, I think some architects are sometimes shy or hesitant in a bigger group to ask some of these questions. And Kaylin, I'm kind of drawing back from my experience with any of these 4 programs that we're talking about. I think this is going to be a small and an intimate kind of group, just by design, so that we can talk through and work through the real world. So like in our architects kind of panel, we'll be working through that, but then we can go out into the real world and see what's happening as well. So that's good stuff.
Absolutely. As a reference, Bill, I don't know if you saw this, we did have a question come through. So as you get a chance to review that, I'll just comment on that. Yes, we are going to keep it nice and intimate and have the architects have their own area where they can feel that closeness with other people just like them. We do have a very large theater on the show floor, but we have other smaller education areas, and the architect's experience is going to be in one of those smaller, more intimate education areas called a learning center. So we do have the architect's experience learning center just for you guys.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to have our own place, right? Yeah, I see a question in here from Nicole. I don't know if everybody can see that, but I think she's saying, Nicole, I can answer from my perspective because the question is from your perspective, how important are sustainable building materials to architects and project managers? And I'll answer that kind of twofold. A lot of the projects managers that I work with, just to be clear, at least in the architectural disciplines, are architects themselves. So at least for me to answer to this question, what I see, and caveat here, I am not an architect, right? I want to make that transparent. These topics of sustainable building materials and practices are critically important to architects that I know. From my perspective, working with architects are one of the trades that I feel passionately about, that really holds the future of this planet in their hands, by not only the design considerations that they make, but then when you're talking about building materials, the total lifespan, and if you look at the full life cycle of building products and materials, I don't think I know an architect who is not concerned or very interested in those. What we will talk about in the program, if you want to, is understanding what I call critical success factors. In our project management bootcamp, we talk about scoping and planning a project. One of the first items that I go to is called critical success factors. So beyond understanding a client's project vision would be understanding what are their critical success factors for a given project. And I go into and I say a little bit, a typical client tells you what their critical success factors are from a subjective perspective. To me, that's a big deal, especially if we're talking about sustainability, because you've got to convert that subjective conversation into an objective metric, right? So to me, this is an opportunity for our industry, the AEC industry, to then educate, folks. So what I will say is, when I'm looking at things, we may understand some different elements about choices in building materials. When we understand what are our critical success factors for our clients, we can then go back and talk about what I think is sometimes underappreciated. What are the critical success factors for our firm, right? Does our firm have a particular ethos or understanding about, in this instance, sustainability of building materials, right? So I think it's going to be an important conversation. Maybe it's a conversation that we can talk with the vendors on the floor to better understand their full life cycle understanding of the materials that they're talking about and the materials that they're providing. Let me see.
Yeah, Bill, I think you're very, very right there. To kind of comment a little further, one thing that we did in the beginning of choosing our education for METALCON this year was we reached out to our previous attendees, we reached out to our advisory council and tried to get a better understanding of what's most important. And to give you an idea of how important green energy and net zero and everything to do with the environmental safety and environmental stuff, to give you an idea of that, we have one course that is being taught twice, only one throughout the entire program, and that course is LEED. So it's the introduction to LEED being presented by the USGBC. So it's incredibly important from what we have heard. Again, I'm not an architect either. We're just, getting information from architects, contractors, engineers, and everyone else who's attending METALCON this year.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And Nicole, I think your follow-up question would be a perfect question to have in that lead presentation. That would be excellent. That'd be really excellent.
Absolutely. I'll make note of that and we'll get that over to that speaker. Awesome. If we don't have any further questions, I'll thank Bill for his time and thank you all for joining us today. We so appreciate it and we look forward to seeing you all at METALCON this year. If anyone has any further questions about METALCON in general or how they can sign up and register, you can reach out to me. You can reach me at Kaylyn, K-A-L-Y-N @metalcon.com and I'll be happy to help you there. If you have any particular questions regarding the 4 courses that Bill has discussed, you can either reach out to Bill or I, and we can definitely discuss that. So thank you all so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in a few short weeks. Have a great rest of your day. And Bill, thank you so much for being our special guest and our speaker today.
Absolutely. I enjoy it. And I look forward to meeting everybody there.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.